So, I was recording a video the other day. I was given a copy of the Founder's Bearcat, which has modded perks or legacy perks or whatever to have crit rating, double crit damage. The point is, you can't have this weapon, and that's going to be a video on the channel, link to it down below if you guys want to check it out. But it made me think about the Tigerjaw, which the Founder's Bearcat is the Founder's version of. And the Tigerjaw not only is a fantastic shotgun in the game, but also has a very, very old video on my channel. It was made in haste right before vacation. I just wanted a group of shotgun videos to go out while I was on vacation. And so the Tigerjaw, a phenomenal weapon that has been buffed over the years, has just been fairly underrepresented on my channel. Now it's been brought up in the best shotguns video, in the shotgun tier list video, and I've basically given it glory every time I've ever talked about shotguns, but it hasn't gotten an updated best perks video. Now, it doesn't really need new best perks. The perks haven't exactly changed, but the weapon has gotten stronger, and there are, I guess, a couple of new things to mention. First and foremost, Chaos Agent exists. Now, Chaos Agent is one of the situations where I brought up the Tigerjaw, so ironically in the loadout that I used today, I didn't actually use Chaos Agent, but Chaos Agent makes it so that you can basically reload the Tigerjaw with a War Cry, a Shockwave, throwing grenades, and all of these things are really nice things that you want to do in battle. And a little pro tip for Chaos Agent, you should always start with the War Cry, that way you're doing a ton of damage, and then you throw the grenades and the Shockwave or whatever else is needed afterward. I just feel like it's more worth it to have a War Cry. I won't be showcasing a lot of that gameplay today because I didn't want the weapon to be overrepresented, because War Cry will just make it straight up better, but Chaos Agent makes it very interesting and will change the perks later on. Chaos Agent aside, the Tigerjaw is still a fantastic weapon. It's really decent single target damage, it's great for crowd clearing, and a lot of the gameplay you'll be seeing, it's basically an Affliction applier. I'm essentially just trying to tag as many enemies with Affliction as I can and watching them wither away. Now, I know that that's not exactly a Tigerjaw showcase as it is an Affliction showcase, but it's a really good 6 perk that's been buffed across the board for every weapon in the game, and I feel like it's a perfectly valid, way to use this weapon. Other than that, it is pretty good single target damage. It's not the strongest single target weapon in the game. In fact, I believe on the shotgun tier list, it was actually rated one of the lower S tier shotguns. I still think it's barely S tier, but it's barely S tier. I really want to drive that home, that it is like a great weapon, but not nearly as good as some of the other big boys. But I still wanted to bring it up because it is a fully auto shotgun, no less. And, at 10 rounds in the mag, you might not be wanting to use it as a fully auto, but it's still something super fun to use. So let's get into the best perks for this weapon, just so that we can say we talked about them. Now, obviously, I'm running the most boring build on this weapon. It's a very old weapon. There isn't a lot of creativity when it comes to it because the perks are pretty set in stone, but there are a few different options. Let's start with the 6 perk. First and foremost, Affliction is amazing for the reasons mentioned. Headshot eliminations can give you a little bit of area of effect, but you'd be basically having a nearly dead 5th perk. Damage to missile monsters and bosses can be okay, but I think the damage to Affliction and slowed and snared is highly recommended. 5 headshots in a row is skippable. Impact and knockback is not going to help you a ton. Slowed and snared, it won't help you do any more damage necessarily, but it can help stall a smasher. Maybe if you get some floor spikes mixed in there, they can stack and it's okay, but I recommend Affliction just to do the most damage possible. Then, of course, at 45%, you want to match it up with whatever you got going on. Now, crits are actually kind of tricky to recommend because this weapon only has 10 shots in the magazine, which means you're not really going to have a ton of opportunity to crit. That's why Affliction comes in a lot. It helps smoothen out the damage because the worst thing you can have with a shotgun, especially if you only have 10 rounds before you have to stop and reload the entire thing, is if you hit an enemy and they have like 1 HP remaining, that's where Affliction can smooth things out a lot, and it goes a long way. 1.5 seconds is typically not that much for like an SMG, but with 10 shots in the mag, you're reloading every 2 or 3 seconds if you're firing full auto, and that is a lot. That is a lot. That's why Chaos Agent can help a little bit, but you are going to be reloading more often than your abilities have time to come back. So if you're going to be running Chaos Agent, you definitely want mag size, but you're still going to have to be careful. I recorded all of my gameplay with that Blast from the Past build. However, you might honestly want to consider double crit damage. So if you're not going to run crit builds, you don't want to trust him, you could do double damage. It's not going to be that much worse, but you're not going to be critting for that happy, extra amount that feels really, really good. And it is technically more DPS overall to run a crit build, so you do want to do that even if you don't always hit as hard as you'd like to. On average, within a magazine, you will crit, and hitting headshot does help you do a little bit more damage, which is nice. But double crit damage with a totally rockin' out build can help a lot. I'm actually going to set that up right now just to show you kind of what that looks like. Typically, I'll like Shrapnel Headhunter in the lead because having every single shot boosted does feel a lot better. I have ran both. I highly recommend her in the lead. But if you're trying to maximize your damage output and run Totally Rockin' Out with this, you absolutely want Buckshot Raptor in the lead. He is way, way stronger with this configuration. Totally Rockin' Out, of course. And then the two heroes I recommend are Battle Beat, of course, and Fumble or Sub Wafers. It depends on whether or not you want to switch off to activate the Sub Wafers or if you want to run around the map and hit fumbles. It doesn't really matter. It's kind of preference at that point. But from here, of course, you want to just put Shrapnel in the support. And that's kind of why I've never shown this loadout on video, because it's kind of obvious in my opinion. You just sort of swap things around barely. Locked and Reloaded is definitely nice, but something that might surprise you guys is that Rex is actually better than Locked and Reloaded. Now, I don't need coconuts. I feel like that's a little redundant, but Rex adds 3% of your current health every 1 second, and we did the math compared to, Locked and Reloaded versus Saurian Might. If you're shooting slow enough and the shotguns get a ton of value out of this, he actually does give you more DPS overall, even without Blast from the Past, than Locked and Reloaded. Now, obviously, in this build, we can run both, so it's kind of okay. But yeah, you might be able to just utilize Rex. Now, if you do want to run the mag size build as mentioned, I do recommend giving up Locked and Reloaded for the obvious reason of using Chaos Agent. Now, Chaos Agent will make you instantly reload. It can be tempting to get that reload bonus, but Rex will always be there, assuming your health is high. And of course, it will add more damage. But if you do find yourself with low health all the time, maybe Locked and Reloaded is better. But yeah, that's what a Totally Rockin' Out build would look like if you're trying to absolutely get the most out of this weapon that you could. Of course, you'd want to run mag size as mentioned, but that will hopefully give you an idea of the best perks for the Tigerjaw. I think this is the best general build. Mag size of Chaos Agent, double crit damage with Totally Rockin' Out. The 6th perk and 5th perk, I think Affliction is best, but if you really wanted a different 6th perk, you could run damage to missiles with bosses. Perhaps you're leveling up this weapon and you just want it usable now, and then you'll use like a Corey perk later, which I do kind of think is worth it. Tigerjaw isn't exactly difficult to get. Seeing as it's a base game weapon, this is available in upgrade llamas, it's available on the map fairly regularly. There is a good chance that it could come around naturally. I think Corey perk comes around often enough for it to be usable to get Affliction. I do believe it's worth it, but I can understand if you're low on funds, maybe you don't have as much, maybe you don't have as much time in the game. There could be lots of reasons that you'd want to just run this with a less optimal build temporarily. And if you are trying to make this weapon as optimal as you can, the element is very important. Energy is going to be the best all around. It's not going to be the best in any one situation, but if you want to just set it and forget it, energy is highly recommended. If you are in canny or below, physical will be way better because elemental enemies are not nearly as common yet. But if you're in twine, if you're in the higher level zones, one of each copy is highly recommended. Or you should always look at your map. So as I'm recording this, there is a situation where we have a firestorm. Every single 4X is fire. Last season, it was nature, and then in the winter seasons, it tends to be water. So basically, if you have a consistent trend where all the 4Xs are a certain element, in this case, it's fire. For you, it may be different. I'd recommend water as of recording and potentially as of release. But I do implore you to look at your own map and see what's going on at the time. If all of the different 4Xs are different elements, I do recommend making one of each copy. But if you know you're running like one 4X all day long, for example, maybe you need lightning in a bottle and you want to run the 124 all over, maybe just make a water copy or whatever the element is needed for that mission, and then just stick to that for the session. In the end, I recommend every element, but I can understand that that's expensive, so that's kind of my recommendation for that. So there you go. A brand new Tigerjaw best perks, giving a little more attention to a very strong shotgun. If you guys are interested in checking out any of the videos mentioned, those will be linked down below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. And then